Hello there and welcome. Today we are going to talk about how to build your Kineticist in Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Kineticist can be a very powerful class, capable of both extremely high single target and also area of effect damage starting from mid-game. However, at the same time it can be a very complex class with quite a lot of different class features, such as burn, infusions, wild talents, certain class exclusive feats, and so on. So without further ado, let us get started. I'll begin by talking about how to build a Kineticist, then I'll go over how the main class abilities work, such as Gather Power. I will also talk about gear for your Kineticist, and lastly how to play a Kineticist during the early, mid and late game. So let's get started on building our Kineticist. My favorite is actually the base Kineticist. Most of the other archetypes don't really gain much, and end up losing quite a lot. Kinetic Knight is a good example. I mean, you do gain Kinetic Blade and also Blade Whirlwind for free, but you lose out on all the Metakinesis feats, highly reducing your damage, and many infusions as well, so I don't find it worth it. The base Kineticist, on the other hand, is very versatile, so you can do about everything you want with it, really. So let us pick it. Now, as for race, my favorite is Human as always because of the bonus feat. Meanwhile, my favorite generic background is Pickpocket because of the bonus 3 initiative rolls. And as a Kineticist, you do want to be going first. Now when it comes to ability points, I like keeping it simple. Your focus should be Constitution, to increase the damage of your blasts, and also the maximum amount of burn you can take. Besides that, we also get both a bit of Strength and Dexterity, to increase our chances to hit with Kinetic Blade if you so desire, and also our ranged blast. The last 2 points can go in something like Intelligence, to increase our skill points per level. Now your skill selection is up to you really. I like going with Use Magic Device, Persuasion, Mobility, and you can also pick something like Trickery or Stealth depending on your character. I'll be going with Stealth. Your first feats are a given really. You definitely want both Point Blank Shot and also Precise Shot, and the reason is simple really. A lot of your early life as a Kineticist will be spent using your blasts as ranged attacks, so you definitely don't want to be getting hit with the -4 penalty whenever attacking foes engaged in melee. Alright, now here comes the first big choice for your build. Which element to specialize in. You can actually choose 2 others as you level up, basically at level 7 and then at level 15, but your first choice has a lot of impact on how you will play your Kineticist. I would say basically there are 2 paths you can take, Fire or Earth. The benefit of picking Fire is that your blasts will be ranged touch attacks, so they are going to target the enemy's touch armor class instead of normal armor class. And as you might already know, all of the enemies in the game have way lower touch armor class than they have normal armor class, so it is very easy to hit them. Even the very powerful late game enemies such as the dreaded Vavakia Vanguard. Also, by picking Fire as your first element and then picking it again at level 7, we will unlock the Blue Flame Kineticist Blast. It is basically a composite Kineticist Blast that deals double the damage of the Fire one, while also being touch attack. Another choice is to pick Earth as your first element. Unlike Fire, Earth is a physical blast, so it's going to target the enemy's normal armor class, much like a normal ranged attack with a bow or a crossbow. On the other hand, the Earth element will let you pick the Bowling Infusion ability, which lets you empower your Kinetic Blast to not only deal damage, but also attempt to trip the enemy, knocking them down. And this will also work with some of the area of effect abilities that we are able to pick eventually, such as the infamous Deadly Earth. For this build in particular, I'll be going with Fire as I find it overall a much better ability because of the fact it once again targets touch armor class. Now our first infusion should certainly be extended range. By default your blast doesn't really have that high of a range, but with this ability you will be able to snipe enemies from very far. Now at level 2 you will gain your first wild talent. These talents are going to be different based on your element's choice during level 1. I like going with Fire's Fury first, as this will eventually increase the damage of our blast, especially starting from level 3 when we gain the Elemental Overflow ability. Now at level 3 you certainly want Spell Penetration. The reason is simple. Energy blasts, such as Fire, actually have to pierce the enemy's spell resistance before hitting them. And since we are going to face a lot of demons, many of them having high spell resistance, this feat is basically a must. Meanwhile, your second infusion can be Kinetic Blade. This lets you turn your blast into a normal attack. The main benefit of this ability to me is unlocking the extremely powerful Blade Whirlwind later on. At level 4 and on every level after this, we are going to increase Constitution, to empower our blast damage, and also increase our burn capability. For your level 4 infusion, I'll be going with Elemental Whispers and then the Hair Familiar. This gives you a very big +4 bonus on initiative rolls. Your level 5 feat is simple as well, Greater Spell Penetration. Pick the Fan of Flames ability. It's also an area of effect ability, but instead of hitting nearby targets, it's going to hit all targets in a rather big 50-foot cone. Just be sure not to damage your own allies with it. As when it comes to spin though, chances are your other party members, especially melee ones, will be close to the enemy and probably end up getting damaged as well. Also, for Fan of Flames, the enemy will still take half damage on a pass set save, while with Spindle, they will completely negate the damage if they save against the blast. For a level 6 Kinetist Wild Talent, you have a few different choices. Because we picked Fire, we have access to both Dazzling Display and also the Persuasive ability. You can actually pick both Dazzling Display and later on Dreadful Carnage and Shatter Defenses. With Dreadful Carnage, whenever you kill an enemy with your blast, you are going to demoralize all of the nearby enemies as a free action. Meanwhile, Shatter Defenses will let you hit shaken enemies as if they were flat-footed, for an even easier chance to hit them, considering we are going to target their touch armor class. Personally, I'll be going with Dazzling Display for now. At level 7, pick Improved Initiative. Once again, a Kineticist really wants to be going first. Now we also have our second element pick, and this can go a number of different ways. You can, for example, pick Fire again, as I said before, and this will only be available if you also picked Fire as your first element. Picking Fire element twice will unlock the very powerful Blue Flame Blast. On the other hand, you can also pick the Earth element now. Earth and Fire will unlock the powerful Magma Composite Blast. It's going to do a little bit more damage than Blue Flame, but on the other hand, it's also going to hit the enemy's normal armor class instead of touch armor class, so you will have a harder time hitting enemies. Not only that, but Earth will also unlock the very powerful Deadly Earth ability starting from level 13. This is an extremely powerful area of effect ability that deals not only quite a lot of damage, but also does not require any roll at all to hit the enemy. The main problem with this ability is that, well, it's going to create, as the name itself implies, a deadly area of effect that deals damage not only to the enemies but also your own party members. And trust me, you don't really want your party members being hit with your own Deadly Earth, otherwise they will take massive damage. I would say this is more of a solo ability really. It's not really helpful when it comes to party-based plays. If you are playing on turn-based, I believe it's going to be easier to properly use this ability without damaging your allies. And starting from level 11, we will be able to get access to the Blade Whirlwind ability, also giving our Fire Blast a very big enemy-only area of effect ability. So keep that in mind. I'll be going with Blue Flame Blast for this build. Another point in Constitution at level 8, and for your White Talent, you can go with Dreadful Carnage as I explained before, but I find this a bit overrated really. The problem is, a Kineticist can deal quite a lot of damage, single target and area of effect as well, so by the time you hit the enemies with your blast, chances are they will be dead, so there's no point in actually getting them to be shaken. When it comes to Fire element, our feats are somewhat limited, especially by picking Fire twice. So I like to have this build focus on Persuasion, at least for dialogue checks and so on. For level 8, I'll be going with Skill Focus Persuasion then. At level 9, pick Weapon Focus and Kinetic Blast. This will give us a +1 bonus to Kinetic Blast, but most importantly, it's also going to let us pick Shatter Defenses on the next level. At level 9 we also get more powerful area of effect abilities to empower our blast. My favorite here is Eruption. This works basically as if a fireball release that's going to deal full damage of your blast because Blue Flame and Fire are energy blasts. The enemy will be allowed a saved for half, but even then it's still going to be a lot of damage. So personally, I'll be going with Eruption. For your level 10 Wild Talent, Persuasive. Your level 11 feat choice is easy. Improved Critical Kinetic Blast. This will basically double the threat range of our kinetic blasts, going from 20 to 1920. Now at level 11 we also have one of our most powerful abilities at last, Blade Whirlwind. This ability is extremely powerful. It does require you to move somewhat close to the enemy, but it's pretty easy to get off. It's basically going to hit every single enemy surrounding you in a 10-foot burst area for your full blast damage, and you can increase this with both Maximize and also Empower Blast. The beauty about this ability is that it only targets enemies, so even if you have allies close, only the enemies are going to take damage. For your level 12 talent, I'll be going with Iron Will, as Kineticists don't tend to have high will saving throws. For your level 13 feat, Shatter Defenses. The great part about this feat is the amazing synergy it has with the Frightful Proportions spell. that most casters can get starting from level 15, so we will have this feat prepared just for that. Now for our level 13 infusion, well, I'll be going with Wall in this case. Wall can be quite decent. It basically creates a vertical line that lasts for a very long time equal to your constitution modifier, and makes the enemy take full damage from your blasts whenever they touch the wall or pass through it. This can hit your allies as well, but it is somewhat easier to make it work so that it only hits the enemies. Of course, if you picked Earth as your second element choice during level 7, then you certainly want the very powerful Deadly Earth now at level 13. For your level 14 feat, go with Improved Iron Will. Honestly, starting from level 15, we don't have that many useful feats left, so I'll be going with Toughness to increase our hit points, as whenever using Burn, as I will explain later on, we do get reduced hit points, so the more we have the better. At level 15 we also have our third and last element choice. I'll be going with Water for the defensive abilities, and also so that we can have access to the powerful Cloud infusion later on. Be sure to pick Water Blast instead of Cold Blast, as water is the one needed for the Cloud infusion. Water and fire combined will give us access to the powerful Steam Composite Blast. It is a physical blast instead of Blue Flame, which is energy. The main benefit of Composite Physical Blast is that they do have higher damage on average. Our Blue Flame Blast will do 38 to 178 damage before meta magic. Meanwhile, a Steam Blast is going to do 76 to 216 for more damage. But once again, it's going to hit the enemy for its normal armor class instead of ranged touch armor class. However, because we only pick water at level 15 by this point in the game, we will be able to achieve enough attack bonus to hit the enemy's normal armor class with ease even on unfair. And this here is still missing a few situational bonuses. At 16, pick Expanded Defense and then Shroud of Water to highly increase either your normal armor class or also shield armor class. Your level 17 feat can be anything you want really. I'll go with Intimidating Prowess just to increase our persuasion even higher, but it's not really needed. You can for example pick Dodge for more armor class, although as a kineticist you probably won't be getting hit. Another skill focus of your choice, and even the Shake It Off feat. As all my other characters tend to have it, I'll go with it just to keep it safe really and increase our saving throws even higher. Now for our 17 infusion we certainly want Cloud. It's basically the same as Deadly Earth really, just once again be careful not to hit your own characters with it. Your level 18 wild talent is also up to you. You can pick Tidal Wave if you want to cast the Tsunami spell, basically an infinite amount of times, but I don't find it that useful. After all, it does have friendly fire, and at this point our blast is going to deal way more damage. The Slick ability meanwhile is the same as a Grease spell, which is not going to be useful this late in the game. The same for Kinetic Healer and Kinetic Restoration, as at this point our Divine casters can already do the same, but a lot more with greater restoration and also mass heal. You can for example go with Skill Focus and something of your choice. I'll pick Stealth just for an example here really. The same for your level 19 feat. As you might have noticed, kineticists aren't really that dependent on feats besides point blank precise shot, improved critical, and also greater spell penetration. I'll be going with Dodge, but at this point it's not going to make much of a difference. Now as for your last infusion, you can pick something like Pure Flame, which only works if you pick Fire twice, so by having access to the Blue Flame Blast. Pure Flame will let you ignore the enemy's spell resistance, but at this point in the game, well, we already have very high spell penetration. Now for my favorite Metakinetic Master ability, I'll be going with Maximized, as Maximize is the one that really increases the damage we do. At level 20, we get our final ability point, which of course went into Constitution, and also our last wild talent, which as I said before can be anything. I'll choose Skilled Kineticist now. Alright, now let's talk about Mythic progression for your Kineticist. I'll first start with a generic progression for, let's say, a Companion Kineticist or any Mythic for your main character really. I'll save my AZATA Kineticist progression for my AZATA guide, which is coming very soon, I promise. So because we picked the Fire element as our first choice, then we are of course going to pick Ascended Element Fire in our first Mythic. The reason is simple really, as this is going to let us bypass any fire resistance or immunities any enemy in the game might have, including bosses. For Mythic rank 2, be sure to go with Mythic Spell Penetration to highly help us pierce demon spell resistance. For Mythic rank 3, go with Kinetic Overcharge. This lets your Gather Power ability reduce the burn cost of all your blasts by 1 additional burn point, so very useful. For Mythic rank 4, be sure to pick Improved Critical and Kinetic Blast to increase our critical multiplier to ×3. Now, an interesting part about Kineticist is that you can actually increase this even further without having a Trickster main character, just by having a Scald with the Lethal Accuracy Rage power for a total of ×4 critical multiplier, very high. By Mythic rank 5, I like going with Last Stand for survivability. For Mythic rank 6, Improved Initiative Mythic. And with a Kineticist we can actually reach such high amounts that we are always going to go first, even on unfair. For Mythic rank 7, I like going with Always a Chance, as our main blast is quite limited, usually hitting only a single target outside of Mythic abilities, so we don't want to be missing out on our main blast attack just because we rolled a 1. Of course, you can bypass this by using the area of effect Kineticist abilities that don't require a roll, but on the other hand, you cannot critical with those. For Mythic rank 8, Over-Infused Blast. This is more useful for, let's say, Earth Kineticists who will also be applying the Bowling Infusion, but frankly the other Mythic abilities aren't really that useful for a Kineticist, so it doesn't hurt to pick Over-Infused Blasts. Now we are at Mythic rank 9, which is our final Mythic for all intents and purposes, and we are going with Archmage Armor to highly increase our armor class. Of course, you can pick this earlier, such as on Mythic rank 8 instead of Over-Infused Blast, or even at 7 instead of Always a Chance. Alright, now let us talk about how the unique Kineticist class abilities work. And the best part about Kineticist is that you have infinite uses of your abilities, which work somewhat like spells really. So long as you can accept the burn, or reduce the burn cost, you can cast them an infinite amount of times. Which makes for very fun gameplay really, as you are not limited by rest at all. First we have, of course, our Kineticist Blast. In this case I picked Fire Element first, and all you have to do is click on the arrow above it to access our Kineticist infusions. So for example, I have the normal Fire Blast here, the Fire Blast with Eruption, with Extended Range, with Spindle, and with Wall. By default, your normal blast does not cost any burn, however, as soon as you upgrade it to a composite blast, meaning the combination between two elements, in this case Blue Flame Blast, which is fire twice, it's going to cost burn. Burn works basically like this. You have a maximum amount of burn, in my case 19, that you can see over here, based on how much constitution your character has, and you also get an increase in your maximum burn amount at level 6 and every 3 levels of Kineticist after that. The way burn works is very simple. It basically reduces your maximum hit points. For example, my Kineticist here has 680 hit points. However, because of burn, he also has minus 80 hit points for a final reduced amount of 538. This is basically your new maximum hit points for gameplay purposes, meaning if you take more than that as damage, your character will end up possibly dying. Another interesting part about Kineticist burn is the Elemental Overflow ability. Elemental Overflow will basically give us bonuses based on how many points of burn we have accepted. So while burn will reduce our maximum hit points, it's also going to grant us a few bonuses. The more burn you have, the higher these bonuses will become, and you can choose between a size bonus increase to Dexterity and Constitution, Strength and Constitution, or the Strength and Dexterity. This is just +2 at 4 burn, but as you increase your burn, this will eventually become +4. Not only that, but you also get your current burn amount added as attack bonus to your blasts. In here, as I have 4 burn, I also have +4 untapped bonus from Elemental Overflow. Your most powerful abilities will cost burn to use. Blue Flame Blast, for example, costs 2. Meanwhile, if we combine it with the Extended Range Infusion, it's going to cost 3, basically 2 from Blue Flame and +1 from Extended Range. There are ways of reducing our burn cost, however. The main ones being the Gather Power ability that you get as a Kineticist as early as level 1. You have Gather Power Low, Gather Power Medium, and also Gather Power High. Basically, when using Gather Power Low, you will spend a move action to channel and reduce the burn cost of your blast by 1. Gather Power Medium does the same, except you will have to spend a full round action to reduce it by 2. On the other hand, Gather Power High will reduce it by 3, but require both a full round action and a move action, so quite a lot really. Personally, I like to go with just Gather Power Low, This way you can actually attack in the same round as you use gather power. There are of course ways of increasing your gather power effectiveness so that you can continue to rely just on gather power low. The main one being the supercharge ability that you get at level 11, which will increase the burn reduction of gather power low by 2. Besides that, we also have composite specialization at level 16, to reduce the burn cost of our composite blasts by 1. Furthermore, we also have the Kinetic Overcharge mythic ability to further reduce the burn cost of gather power by 1. Basically, just by being level 11 and having the Kinetic Overcharge mythic ability, your gather power low will now reduce your burn cost by 3, very powerful. And before that by 2 with just the mythic ability. This is why my Blue Flame Composite Blast with extended range costs 0 burn, even with Empower and Maximize. When using Gather Power, your character will channel for a bit as you can see here, and then unleash the ability that you have chosen. Because Gather Power Low only costs a move action, you will still be able to perform your chosen action in the same round as you gather power. So overall, the best of the Gather Power abilities really. This way we won't lose an action. Another unique part about the Kineticist class are the Metakinesis abilities, basically Empowered, Maximized, and also Quicken. You gain Empower at level 5, Maximize at level 9, and Quicken at level 13. The most important ones are basically Empower and Maximize, and they work in the same way as the Meta Magic. Maximize will make our abilities do full damage, as if we have just rolled Maximum in all of the dice. Meanwhile, Empower will increase the value by 50%. These two abilities are what let Kineticists do quite amazing amounts of damage, both single target and also area of effect. Of course, they also cost burn, and this is why we have to rely on the Gather Power ability and its enhancements to reduce our burn costs to manageable amounts. Using them is very simple really. All you have to do is basically click on the icon to turn them on and off. And as you can see, the burn cost amount of our abilities will also go up as we turn these abilities on. But of course, with Gather Power, we can reduce it eventually to 0. Alright, so let us talk now about gear for your Kineticist. Kineticists actually do have a few pieces of unique gear that only works for their class. Let's get started with the Amulet slot, and the choice is simple really. The Alexia's Magnifying Amulet is overall the best for most classes because of the stacking increase to your highest ability score. And in the case of Kineticists, we do have quite a massive amount of Constitution for both extreme hit points and also more powerful blasts. During the early game, you can use Amulets of Natural Armor or anything else really. For your Armor slot, I like going with Deadly Raised for the special Insight bonus on ranged touch attack rolls, and most of our Kineticist abilities that have rolls will be ranged touch. Haramakis don't really interfere with your Dexterity bonus to Armor class, and they even provide a small 1 point in Armor class. For your Robe slot, I would go with ones that increase spell penetration. In this case, I like the Robe of Determination for a +2 increase to that. For your Belt slot, you want belts that increase Constitution. In this case, I really like the Clutch of Corruption belt because of the very high +8 enhancement to Constitution. Your Glove slot can be anything really. In this case, because my character already has the extra sneak attack damage from the Baphomet the Uncaged book, I went with Gloves of the Death Dealer to increase my sneak attack damage. But you can also use something like Gloves of Arcane Eradication for an untyped bonus to ranged touch attack rolls, and also an increase in use magic device. For the Boot slot, well, as usual, the best boots overall I think are the Boots of Freest Rain for permanent freedom of movement effect and also a bonus to speed. But when you have access to haste and the actual spell, it doesn't really make much of a difference. Now the Headband slot is when things get very unique for Kineticists, as they have access to the special Kinetic Diadem Headband. This will highly increase the damage both of our normal blasts and also composite blasts. For the greater version of this diadem, you will have to meet the Skeleton Merchant while traveling through the world map during Chapter 5, and asking him for magical items. The lesser version of this diadem can be found in the Silken Thread Atelier during Chapter 1 while traveling in Canabres, so be sure not to miss it. For the Goggle slots, my favorite are the Goggles of Piercing Gaze for +1 insight on attack and damage rolls against demons, and also a very high bonus to Persuasion. But this doesn't really matter for Kineticists. As usual, for your Cloak slot, you want Cloaks of Resistance, which has high enhancement as possible, in my case +6, to grant us a big boost in saving throws. For your rings, the most important one by far is the Sigil of Destruction. This is another Kineticist unique gear that will grant you a very powerful increase in critical range, doubling your current critical range. The best part is that this will stack with the improved critical feat, so our kinetic blast normally will have only a 20 critical range, but with improved critical it will become 19 to 20, and then with the Sigil of Destruction ring it's going to become 17 to 20, very powerful, basically quadrupling our chances of getting a critical hit. Now you might be wondering, but this ring will not stack with itself, so there's not a point in having more than one. For another good ring, I like the Ring of Guiding Star for the bonus to initiative. Now when it comes to bracers, there aren't really any special bracers for Kineticist, so you can go with something like Bracers of Armor to increase your armor class, or the Bracers of Balance for a bonus to trip attempts if you are playing a nerf Kineticist with the Bowling Infusion ability. In my case, because I have the Sneak Attack ability, I'll be going with Bracers of Abrupt Onslaught to increase my sneak damage even further. I don't actually have a weapon here, in this case it's just my Kinetic Blade ability, which deals, as you can see, immense amounts of damage, 154 to 434, all because of our Empower and Maximize Blast ability. And this is with the Composite Steam Blast. Now as far as quick slots, we also have another unique Kineticist item here, in this case the Lesser Kineticist Rod, which will permanently boost the power of our blasts. And the best part is that, unlike normal metamagic rods, this one does not have a limit of uses, so all you have to do is turn it on, and the effect will always work. You can find this very special rod in the Artisan's Tower area, during Chapter 3 earliest, basically for Greybird's quest during the Dragon Hunt. So be sure not to miss it, as you can actually miss that area. Your early game as a Kineticist is going to be mostly just like that of a ranged character who has a bow or a crossbow. Basically, you're going to damage the enemies from range using, let's say, Fire Blast powered by Extended Range Infusion and also Gather Power Low. So let's target this Marauder Archer here, and we are at level 4 at the moment. There we go. It's not going to do much damage early on, as Kineticist is a build that basically, the more levels you have, the more powerful you become. The first big boost coming at level 5 with the Empowered Metakinesis ability. Now, it is true that most of the demons you face early game will have quite a lot of fire resistance, being able to avoid most of your blast damage. There is, however, a way to overcome that, and it is to have Ember use the Vulnerability Curse Hacks that she already starts out with. This is going to remove any energy resistance the enemy might have without a save, at least for a single round. So let us have Ember cast Vulnerability Curse on this Sheer Demon, and wait until it hits so our Kineticist can blast the enemy with fire. Alright, so she's casting it, now we can use our blast. And there we go, we were able to hit the Sheer with full fire damage. It's also important to note that you can increase your blast damage to 3d6 plus 3 pretty early in the game, just by having access to the Lesser Kinetic Diadem Headband. Now, as soon as mid-game, so around level 10 to 11, you will already have access to some decent area of effect blast abilities, such as the extremely powerful Blade Whirlwind, and of course Deadly Earth at level 13 if you picked the Earth element. So be sure to mix in those with your normal blast. The more enemies you face, the better Blade Whirlwind becomes, really. Now, another great thing about Kineticists is that they are very good at setting up ambushes. Take this Carnivorous Crystal here, for example. Because of the uneven terrain, there isn't much of a point in charging at it out of battle, as our characters will have to go down here, which will most likely initiate the battle. With a Kineticist, however, and the Extended Range Infusion, we can use our blast to properly snipe the enemy from far away, using Gather Power High as a way to reduce our burn cost to 0. Here's how it goes. Let's just target the crystal and wait. We are gathering power to reduce our burn cost. And there we go. As soon as we unleash the blast, the battle will initiate. So you are able to instantly kill the crystal with no danger to our party whatsoever. The same for this ancient carnivorous crystal up here. We can just set up Kineticist wall here, thus instantly killing it before battle even really began. Certainly a great way to handle these very annoying enemies, right? Thankfully, Kineticists can also dismiss their area of effect abilities. Otherwise, our party will take huge damage. Meanwhile, at the end game, all you have to do is cast Cloud if you picked Water, And of course, Blade Whirlwind still remains very powerful with the added bonus of not hitting your party members. Alright, so this was it for today's video. I hope I've managed to properly explain to you how to build your Kineticist and how the class works overall. Be sure to stay tuned as I will soon release my AZATA Mythic Path guide with an addition of how to build an AZATA Kineticist based on the special and unique AZATA Mythic abilities. Please remember to support the channel if you can by liking the video and subscribing. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.